I'm Beth, and these are my memories. To the complex and precious people who appear in them, thank you. I forgive you, and I'm sorry. You shaped me, and I carry you still. In remembering, I've come to see us all more clearly, not as villains or saints, but as humans doing the best we knew how. I must have forgotten, until now. The dining room table was not exactly stripy, not exactly wood grain. It was more of a mottled streak effect of brown and green. It was a sturdy, flat-sided oval that could accept 2 expansion leaves to enlarge it from the day-to-day 5 feet long to over 7 feet long for when there was a birthday or the grandparents came over. It first entered our lives in East Tip Heights, the way that new fixtures and furnishings seem to magically appear to little children. We usually didn't see things like this arrive, they just suddenly were. Our parents probably planned these drop-offs for when we would not be underfoot and impeding progress with our help.
Stop playing with that. You're gonna get hurt.
Go on. Shoo. You kids get outside and play.
I don't think we were the first family to adopt this item, but if the table had a life of fame and glory before being transplanted to our little house, it's unfortunately lost to time. In the East Tip house, it lived in the dining room in the elbow between the sliding glass door and the peninsula where the stove lived. Same stove that burned my palm with a coil pattern when Judith told me it had cooled enough to touch it.
Ouch.
The stove that made our popcorn in the deep saucepan with the wooden handle, which we looked forward to every Sunday night when Walt Disney came on TV. From that table we looked out towards the cornfield that sometimes had cows in it after the harvest. We could see the wire fence that hosted milkweeds that the monarch butterflies needed to fuel their migration all the way to Mexico.
Okay, who's got the map this year? I told you, Carl. It's in our DNA.
We could see the little brick red wooden shed my dad had built from scratch with white X's on its barn doors. Next to the table in the dining room was the tall, wide cabinet with the record player. One of those big, old-fashioned wooden consoles with the doors on the front. Back then it was furniture. If it was furniture, it had to be taken seriously, and we kids had to treat it with care and respect. Despite the fuss about the seriousness of the record player, that was where the Chipmunks album was kept. We knew how to work the record player, and we played that Chipmunks album over and over again while we colored or drew at the green-brown table. Mom used to draw paper dolls on cardstock. She's very artistic, and she drew paper dolls that were better than the ones from the store. They were more realistic and prettier, only in pencil or pen and supplied upon request. But we could design and cut out little outfits for the homemade paper dolls, with little paper tabs that could be folded around the doll so it could wear the outfit we had made for it. All of Mom's paper dolls looked a little bit like her. Big eyes, wide smile, short hair. Long hair would have interfered with attaching their little paper outfits. We sat at that table every day doing these kinds of creative little crafts. Mom always had ideas of things we could make or do. We had homemade clay, we painted, made popcorn balls. We decorated cookies at the appropriate times of year, very often listening to the Chipmunks, and very often the cookies were burnt. One canceled out the other. Behind the record player was a slot with a space behind it at the back of the shelf. One day, Mom announced that the Chipmunks album had accidentally fallen into the slot and there was no way to get it out. The Chipmunks album was gone. Forever gone. I cried. I loved the Chipmunks. I now remember that there were doors that opened into the space below the record player. In retrospect, I completely understand why that album had to tragically disappear. When we moved to Fowler, the table had been placed in the kitchen because we had a different table in the fancy separate dining room.
Ooh.
Well, not fancy now, but fancy to us then. Kent, an older kid from down the street, helped me mix up some goop in a glass jar at that table. I think we were trying to make paint remover. Why we needed paint remover is now an enigma, but that's the story my memory tells me. We raided the kitchen cabinets and added anything that looked like chemicals: baking powder, alum, yeast. Then we put a lid on our concoction and left it in the laundry room so we could come back and try it on some paint samples the next day. Unfortunately for us, during the night, my mom was awakened by an explosion in the laundry room. The expanding yeast in the liquid goop placed in the warm laundry room had been under pressure in a closed glass jar. Boom! Sploosh! To her credit, Mom did not drag my stupid ass out of bed to clean up this toxic disaster, probably because it was full of glass shards. She did give Kent a good talking to because he was old enough to know better.
Do your science experiments at your own house.
In the 70s, people had few qualms about telling off other people's kids, especially if they blew up the laundry room. Years later, Kent had an emotional breakdown and was admitted to the Wabash Mental Hospital. I never heard of what happened to him after that. Also in Fowler, we had reconnected with Maggie's family, who had lived across the street from us in East Tip Heights. They had also moved out of Lafayette, and we would occasionally go visit them or they would come to see us. One time we had gone to see them in Peru, Indiana, and Maggie and her brother Miles had taken us to their neighborhood playground. On the merry-go-round, Miles sat crisscross applesauce around the center post as we turned the ride. Suddenly, he started to scream in terrified agony. His sleeve had caught on the center post and his arm was broken. It's fortunate that Judith was there because I did not understand the gravity of what had happened. Again, she showed her calm under pressure and got help. I remember one time Maggie's mom, Janice, visited my mom, and I came into the kitchen to find them at the green-brown table. Janice had started selling Mary Kay and was giving Mom a makeover. She got the full treatment: foundation, liner, blush, mascara. Neither of them appreciated my comment that Mom looked like she was made of wax. Janice pursed her lips as if she wanted to respond, but she didn't. I took off outside and forgot about that for decades. At Eulin Lane, I had a science project that involved mealworms. They lived in a glass jar and I fed them, and now I have no idea what the purpose of having them was. But the glass jar was left one night on the green-brown table next to the box of Wheaties that Tommy and I would use at breakfast to build a privacy wall around our bowls.
I wanted to use the milk. Well, you can have the sugar.
Dad had come into the dining room during the night and picked up the jar to see what it was. When he saw worms inside of it, he threw my science experiment in the trash can outside. I'm sure this did not go over well with my 6th grade teacher, Mr. Russo, when I had to explain what happened to my mealworms.
Please believe me, my dad threw it away.
The little house on Eulin Lane was the first time I realized that Dad was the one who had painted and maintained the finish on the table. One day, I came into the combined family and dining room in the renovated garage area to find him alternately rubbing green and brown onto, or off of, that table in huge, full-body strokes. I suddenly felt bad. There had been many times I had found a loose flap of paint and tugged at it, or picked where it felt soft. I had thoughtlessly damaged the table's paint and caused the effort that my dad was now expending. I had never thought before about what the table looked like. I realized that it had taken creativity to not just paint it brown or green, but to use both and work the two colors in together the way I saw him doing now. I can't say it was really a conscious thought, but it was one of those rare moments when I started to realize something.
Huh.
I had begun to form a fuzzy comprehension that my parents might not only be my mom and dad,
Wait a minute.
they might also be humans
What?
who could sometimes feel unappreciated and unwitnessed. There are memories that live in objects: tables, albums, jars of goop. And then there are memories that live in the body. This one lives in water, in chlorine and sunburn and longing. I wrote it years ago as a poem. Memory of Columbian Park swimming pool. It may as well have been the ocean to this landlocked child who had never set foot on the coast. For all I knew, it might be 1,000 feet deep with hungry sharks circling, ready to snatch off a flailing leg. The rite of passage was momentous this summer. I finally dog paddled out to the fence, concentric to the wade-in edge. I'd followed my older sister out this far, but while she was strong enough to enter the deep, I clung victoriously to the thickly painted metal barrier and tried to make eye contact with my mother at water's edge. In her bikini with a bottle of Quick-Tan, I spied her, young, vibrant, and beautiful, on a concrete bench in ankle-deep water. As the sun traveled downward in the sky, we changed out of our clammy suits with all the other naked mothers and babies in the dungeons of the Columbian Park swimming pool and hurried out to relish frozen custard. Tables and round swimming pools, scratched paint and paper dolls. These are artifacts that mattered, but are now gone. They remind us that memory is not just what we keep, but what keeps us. The surfaces we mixed exploding goop on, the waters we swam through to reach the deep, the midnight booms and laughter and silence that still reverberate. This is the undertaking of remembering, the resonance of becoming. This is the repository of echoes and artifacts. Thank you for listening. These are my memories, and maybe they echo yours too. I must have forgotten, but I remember now. If this episode stirred something in you, please consider sharing it, subscribing, or leaving a review. Sound design for this episode includes excerpts from MuseHub and Pixabay. These audio textures help carry the memory, shape the emotional arc, and are honored with gratitude here.